Okay, so we're up to the third phase of our three-step process. We've already researched the document and planned it out. Then we've drafted an outline and a rough version of it. And now we're actually editing it. So in editing it, you're going to look for improvements in sentence structure and kind of move things around. What's the priority? What's the topic sentence? What's the call to action? Then proofread it. This is where you want to make sure, obviously, that there's no typos, no grammatical errors. You can look at things like formatting and fonts and spacing, bulleted lists, numbered lists. Are all those things working to give you the best kind of communication? And then finally, you want to evaluate it. Now, this one, you might have to wait for that feedback loop, which could be delayed, where, okay, I'm going to post this blog post, I'm going to send out this email, and then you're waiting for the response. The trick about this really is, as you do this more often, the next time you send out an email or a blog post, you use the feedback from the previous one to make sure the next one is better. Don't be afraid to keep revising it. Just think about your reader. Is it as clear, concise, and readable as it possibly can be? Put yourself in their shoes and make sure that your goal is clear. So let's take your resume and cover letter, for instance. How many resumes and cover letters do you think your prospective employer is going to be reading? What's going to make yours stand out? The fact that it is concise, clear, well-written, well-researched, and well-edited. Take a tip from social media. Microblogging on platforms like Twitter, you have to be short and concise. There's a limit to what you can put in there. So use those same techniques when you're drafting your resume and cover letter. In keeping with a professional business message, keep your writing short, stick to the main ideas, make sure you use descriptive and clear words, don't try to be flowery in your writing, and personalize it. If you're writing a resume or a cover letter, think about the company that you're writing it to, their brand image, the company culture. Obviously, try to find the name of the person. Don't dear sir or madam it. If you do your homework and do your research, you can find out who's going to be reading your cover letter. So a lot of times you might be guilty of trying to write something that's a little too effusive, a little too much enthusiasm, but in business, it doesn't really go over as well. Look at these two examples. High-quality environments for children are a necessary precondition for facilitation and enhancement of the ongoing learning process. Well, it sounds pretty educated, but actually this is much clearer. To learn properly, children need good schools. The second example, in regard to the matter of obtaining optimal results, it is essential that employees be given the implements that are necessary for their work to be completed satisfactorily. Or simply just say, for best results, give employees the tools they need to do their work. This is the way to go. So the adage here is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. So cliches are these kind of metaphor words like get all your ducks in a row, to, kind of play around with words a little bit. And one time they were creative copy and advertising and marketers use them a lot, but they kind of become hackneyed and you really don't want them in business writing. So something like we encourage everyone in this company to think outside the box might be altered to we want them to think unconventionally. So slang is another thing to consider in your writing. If you're writing to a certain tribe, you can get away with it because you know your target audience and you've studied their demographics and their psychographics and you're maximizing your communication. But in business, you want to make sure that you have the most clarity depending on who's going to be reading your stuff. So it's probably a good idea to avoid slang. Interculturally, intergenerationally, people don't understand what you're saying, and you don't want that, in my humble opinion. So in your business writing, make sure you are as clear as water. Strive for precision. Think about who's reading it and what their background is. Make sure you're not using any vague terms. Get rid of pronouns as much as possible. Be descriptive in what you're trying to say to them. Let's take a look at some of these examples. She requested that everyone help out becomes our manager begged each team member to volunteer. They will consider the problem soon becomes our steering committee will consider the recruitment problem on May 16th. We received many responses. The sales division received 28 job applications. So you see the difference between vague writing and precise writing? So the next thing I'm going to take a look at is document design, the idea of how you lay out your communication and how it looks visually and how it actually enhances the overall readability, which enhances the communication. So if you look at the first document here, it's kind of milquetoast, there's just grayed out text all over the place. And then if you look at the second document, it uses a lot of other design tools like white space, so that things don't look as crowded, headings to kind of point out important transitional changes in the document, bulleted lists, which save time in reading and kind of make it more concise. You can also use a numbered list, a graphic element, various things. So let's take a better look at document design. Okay, so our technical division wanted to launch a couple of webinars to invite people to learn more about composing and creating various advertising campaigns and messages. So we drafted this copy and think about how we can improve it. So first of all, it looks kind of crowded on the page, right? So one thing we can do is think about the white space. So the white space is, areas like this. White space is definitely golden. It gives us a little visual relief. The other thing is chunking into headings. So the idea of creating some headings and maybe changing the type to bold or a larger size or a different color. All of those things can kind of signal some kind of sections in the document, make it easy to skim and also to preview and review. And then we have this list of places, dates, and prices. So the idea about kind of making these into columns and maybe using tabs might be a great way to kind of section it off and just give it a grid look so it's easy to scan. We can also add some graphic things and various other things to kind of train the reader's eyes to what's important. So here's the file after it's been formatted, and notice what happened here. We see some nice headings that kind of chunk the information. We have graphics that are text wrapped around the copy. We've added a tabbed list here, which gives columns for the locations, the dates, and the prices, making it really easy to scan up and down. I've added a table, which again creates a grid of information that makes it easy to access for the reader. A bulleted list that allows you to kind of sample the information by skimming it. So you don't have to really go crazy reading every line. You can get what's going on. And then we've added some smart art graphics and kind of organizational chart. So all of these things make the document more accessible and certainly nicer looking on the page, more inviting to read. Okay, so here's the two documents side by side, before and after. You be the judge. Which one would you rather read? Which one points out the important information and directs your attention to it? I think the business-like one is definitely the one that has all the formatting tools edited in there. And of course, the idea is you don't want to overdo these things either. Maybe, if I reread this, I might want to say, get rid of the stars, or maybe swap out the meeting graphic for an actual picture of my team. But you can do a lot with the formatting to make your document more professional, more accessible, more readable. And by the way, if you've taken AC111, you're probably familiar with this project because we do it in the third module of Microsoft Word. So the next thing you might take a look at is the choice of fonts. Okay, those are the typefaces. So there's two really broad categories. There's the serif font, and those have these little kind of flourishes, maybe tails or feet that kind of connect the letters together. And then there's without serifs, or sans serifs from the French. And those are more kind of blocky. They might do better for display type, for headlines, for your headings. And then the idea of a cursive font. So cursive fonts are often script fonts. They should be used with caution because their readability factor is not as good. They're a little more artistic looking. Then there's the idea of capitalization, the case, whether it's capitalized or not. So, that all caps sometimes means shouting, and Capitalized is a little bit harder to read. So if you capitalize the entire document, can be very cumbersome for your reader. The idea of lowercase is, again, the letters kind of flow into each other a little better. They kind of connect better. It just makes it easier to read the whole word like that. So you could also layer your document with a variety of fonts, and you might use those font cues to let people know the importance of it. So maybe the heading can be laid out in a sans serif font to give it that bold kind of display look, and then the body copy laid out in a serif font, which kind of makes it easy to read and scan. So you've got lots of fonts to choose from, and a lot of them can kind of say something about your copy or about your brand image. You don't want to overdo it, though. Make sure that you don't use too many fonts, because then it becomes a little hard to figure out what's going on. So I would say 2 fonts or 3 fonts at the most in most documents is going to give you a kind of cohesive look. So the final stage is the careful proofreading of your document. Think about a resume with a typo on there. It's not going to really give you a good sense of credibility or success for your brand, for your company. So you want to make sure that your documents are bulletproof at this point and also effective. So you want to make sure you proofread your document. Obviously, things like spelling, grammar, punctuation, names and numbers. Don't embarrass yourself by spelling someone's name wrong, and also formatting. Bot, Grammarly are both artificial intelligence tools that you can add to your Gmail and your Word documents to give you that extra check to make sure that your document is as bulletproof as possible. So you can use a group of standard proofreading marks also to proofread your document. And if you're sharing it with an editor or someone else, they'll understand those because they're universally accepted. It's really a good idea also to print the document, scan it on the screen, but printing it gives you a different look at it. And you can add these proofreading marks on there and have a proof buddy, someone else who looks at the document totally objectively. They're not wrapped up in the writing that you did, and they can really give you an unbiased opinion of the document. And then use the final evaluation tools. Is your document polished and credible? Is it going to represent you, your personal brand, your business? Is it going to achieve the goals that you set out initially for the document? And then how will you get feedback and measurement? So things like encouraging a response. And after you get that feedback, how will you loop in those changes the next time that you draft a similar document?